that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, welcome to another classic literature, of real literature, I don't know, but one name that always has popped up for a long time is Hemingway, and there's another YouTuber, I'll leave a link in the description, he reviewed this one, and so I just decided to start with this one, Ernest Hemingway's A Pharaoh to Arms. Kind of like MASH in the sense that it focuses more on the medical team than like an actual soldier in the army. But ultimately this is a love story, and I put that in quotations. Can't really say more without spoilers. It's a bit more complicated than that, but it's essentially what this is. It's not really about the war, though there is enough dialogue in here that is fantastic, by the way, because Hemingway has some beautiful prose about, this is not a preachy book in terms of war being bad. That's not really the focal point of the book, but it is in there with people discussing things together about the nature of war and how it's good or bad or whatever the case may be. It is in there, but ultimately this is a story of love. And maybe not the right kind of love, maybe a toxic kind of love, maybe even a manipulative love on both ends, but still love regardless. And it feels very real at times. And I said in a previous video, who are we that are so blessed to share our stories like this across centuries, across time? And while it may be a different context, one may be a bit different, and while I've never certainly been in a relationship exactly like that, there are things there that I resonated with and could understand. So I think that really resonated with me, that somebody that is long past now, that was writing that book in a certain time, could still relate to me now in 2025. And again, is that not the beauty of literature, being able to do that with people? I mean, when we pass away, regardless if you believe in an afterlife or whatever you believe in, what ultimately do you leave behind here? Maybe some kids? Unless you do something truly, truly, truly substantial, in 10,000 years from now, no one will know you existed. Assuming we don't have another Library of Alexandria, which is a bit harder now with the internet age, you could live on forever through your works. You don't know. I do think that's interesting. So, while this story may have critiques of war itself, it is not the focal point. It is ultimately the relationship between our main character, Henry, and his lover, Catherine. And that's all I can really say non-spoiler-wise. But this book feels very real, and very much like real life. It is not, there's no particular plot in here, or at times it can feel rather meandering on what's actually happening. It's all just kind of day-to-day things. It is a war, don't get me wrong, but the focal point is not the war itself. Just kind of an exploration of relationship, and it's not just with Henry and Catherine, but his friends too, and the people he interacts with apart from that. One of the standouts of this book being Rinaldi and the priest. There are certain scenes between Henry and Rinaldi and so on and so forth that are just exquisite, and it really, something I've learned about myself. I know The Name of the Wind, I haven't gotten to that yet. That's a fantasy book, and it's a very mixed book with people. People get very up in arms about it, one way or the other. But I'll tell you what, through reading this and reading other things, I've really come to determine, you give me an exquisite sentence that really knocks my socks off, I'm probably going to like your book. Or a good quote, or anything. I like good writing. It's something I'm learning. I don't know how to identify it myself, but I like good writing. I want to get into some spoilers, but I can't really do that now, because I don't want to ruin the book for you. If you have not read it, if you can hear my dogs, no matter how hard I try to make this professional, somebody finds a way to ruin it for me. But that being said, I absolutely think this is worth a shot. If you have not read this, please, please, please go give this a read. You can get it for very cheap on Kindle. But if you want to get out of your comfort zone, this is relatively short. It's not like a 1,000-page Malazan book. Short, sweet. Maybe you gain something from it, maybe you don't. There are some critiques that we'll get into and spoilers more in depth, but there are claims by a lot of people that Catherine herself is very one note and a very poorly written female character with no agency. Mostly due to the time it was written. There may be some truth to that, but I also think it is a bit more nuanced and a bit more complicated than it is being made out to be. We'll get into that in spoilers, but I wanted to address it because people do bring it up. And especially if you're a woman watching it or deciding to read it, you may feel differently from me. I can only give you my experience. I am not a woman. I don't claim to be one. I don't have any stake in that race. So, obviously, women may have a different opinion on this, and that's completely fine. I'm just giving you mine. I do think there's some valid arguments to be made for that, but I also think there's a bit more nuance involved with that. But I'm going to get into spoilers now. Ultimately, this is a story about love. But when I say that, I don't necessarily mean pure. All I have to say, I do think it's worth your time. I'm not the only one who will say so. Many people will say so. Some people say this book is boring. That's the beauty of the internet. That's the beauty of opinions. We all differ. But what I can say is I think you should give it a chance, especially if you or someone like me who's primarily a sci-fi and fantasy guy and is trying to go outside your wheelhouse and explore new things. I think it's fairly short, and if you get it on Kindle, not too much of an investment on your wallet, and something to try. Maybe you won't like it. That's okay too. But give it a shot. Let me know what you think if you've read it in the comment section below. I'm going to get into spoilers if you don't want that. There's the door. Brother in arms, his fellow comrades, they say he should go to Italy. Henry. The priest offers his home. Now, I really like the priest. The priest has this interesting dynamic with Henry. Henry is very much not religious. The priest very much is. And they have this sort of mutual understanding and respect. You know, I get the feeling the priest is always praying and wishing the best for Henry. And Henry appreciates his company and doesn't get offended that he may be doing those things, but actually takes it as a sign of deep love and respect that he does that. Now, that's me psychoanalyzing and theorizing. It's not very explicitly said in the book. As I said, actually I didn't say this, but there's a bit of it kind of sort of reminded me of Cormac McCarthy a bit in the terms of the dialogue. Because a lot of times in books, you know, like, I don't know, Alex says that I absolutely adore your blue hair, and then, you know, in the thoughts, it's like he actually was quite envious of the hair or something, whatever you want to think. But in Cormac McCarthy's books, or in Hemingway's books, at least what I've seen, it's a lot like a script, or it doesn't explicitly tell you how you should be reading the text. It just kind of has the text there, and you infer the subtext, which I think is kind of interesting. But so that's what I gather from that, which I think is something that could also be, you know, like when it comes to, you know, I can only go from my own understanding. Of course, there's different religions, different faiths, but when it comes to like the Christian faith, right? I remember I saw a video of an atheist one time on YouTube, like a long time ago. I would have been middle school, high school at this point. And he says, I disagree with a Christian 100%. I don't believe a single thing they say. But if they don't tell me about Christ, if they don't tell me about their faith, then they don't care about me. Oh, actually, I saw that from an atheist. And there's a book by a former Muslim turned Christian, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus, was the book name. And it doesn't matter. But in that, he's like super into his Muslim faith, right? Super devout, super into it. He heard that this girl in his class was a Christian, but she never talked to him about, her faith. Maybe because she didn't want to offend him, she didn't want to get into a fight. She didn't want to talk about her faith in front of him because he had his own, for whatever reason she may have had. And so in his mind, she didn't care about him. Because he understood the fundamentals, like, so you believe, if I don't believe what you believe, I go to hell? And you're not telling me about that? Then you must really hate me. You must not care about me at all. I don't agree with you. But if you cared about me, you would tell me. And so he lost respect for her, at least back then. In a similar way, the atheist said something similar. And so I all that to say, I feel like that dynamic is there with him and the priest, and there's a sort of really strong bond there. And it's very subtle, and somebody else might feel completely differently. And maybe it's because of where I'm at. Don't know. But I really enjoyed a lot of their scenes together. But he ends up not going with the priest like the priest offers, and he ends up going to around Italy, to Rome and all these places, and just having fun on his time off. From here, he goes on to eventually meet Miss Barkley, who is a nurse, and they're talking, and Miss Barkley discusses her deceased fiance and how that's been really hard on her. And shortly after that, within the book, Henry and Barkley are now a thing. They've become a couple. They've become a fling. They don't really tell other people about it. They're a bit secretive, but everyone kind of knows, and they're enjoying each other's company. And I have a quote I wrote down. I thought she's probably a little crazy. It was all right if she was. I did not care what I was getting into. This was better than going every evening to the house for officers with the girls climbed all over you and put your cap on backwards as a sign of affection between their trips upstairs with brother officers. I knew I did not love Catherine Barkley, nor had any idea of loving her. This was a game, like bridge, in which you said things instead of playing cards. Like bridge, you had to pretend you were playing for money or playing for some stakes. Nobody had mentioned what the stakes were. And it was all right with me. Their relationship is very flawed. I want to get into this idea that Catherine is written poorly. I can see that, especially with the time period that this was written in, but I have to think this was intentional. And again, even what I said with the priest, and we'll later talk about Rinaldi, there's a deepness hidden within the subtext of the scene, but what's actually presented is very surface level. It's almost like Henry does not want to dive in deep into a relationship, romantic or otherwise. So he remains very surface level with everyone. And that's how he goes into it with Catherine. He says, I love you, I think you're beautiful. He does all that, but he has no intention of anything long term. Catherine, I don't think she's as stupid as people may assume she is in this book. I think she kind of exactly gets who he is. I think she's been hurt, she's had loss, she just wants something fun too. And, over time, people in 2025 can say casual is casual, and I just want to have some casual sex, and it doesn't mean anything. We're all monkeys after all. We're all primordial soup. Sex is just sex. It's just a biological feature. It doesn't matter. But if you spend enough time with someone, I don't care who you are. I don't care what your beliefs are. Something, may it be biological or spiritual or whatever you want to deem that, something deeper will emerge. It will not just be sex. Think about this. If you have a one-night stand with a woman or a man, if a woman or a man is watching, or with a man, whatever your thing is, whoever you're with, once, okay? Then you never see that person again. Now, same scenario, but you've met up with this person 100 times, and it's just casual. Now, one night stand, gets hit by a car. You don't talk to them, you'll have no idea, so you don't care. Not really. You may sympathize, but you're not going to mourn that, even if you did learn, because it was a one-night stand. Somebody you've done it with 100 times. You learn that they tragically died in a car accident. If you don't get a little teared up, you're not human. And if you do, then it was probably a little bit more than sex. There is no such thing as casual, unless it's one and done. And even then, debatable. Hot take? Probably. It's 2025. And I, completely honest here, I'll be completely honest and vulnerable with you, I am almost a quarter of a century old, and I've never had sex, so what am I talking about? Now, to be fair, I'm not Timothy Chalamet. I'm not being offered things left and right. I don't know what I would say if I was being offered left and right. But what I also do know is that I would want my first time to be special. I don't know when it will happen, but I'm in no rush. I've gone this long without it. I can go longer. The point of all that whole spiel, they will fall in love. Do I think it's healthy? No. Do I think it is flawed? Yes. Do I think it is toxic? Also yes. But love is complicated. And while I won't say that this is a proper way to have love, they do have it eventually in this book. And she is dealing with a lot. She lost her fiance. She knows he's still part of the war. Henry, I mean. And she's really insecure. But you know what? So is Henry. Now she constantly looks for words of affirmation and assurance. And he does too. He's just a bit subtle about it. But there are times where she says, we are one. I don't even exist. I'm here to please you. But I think that comes more from her fear of being alone again than it does from her just being the perfect woman that just wants to please the man. Again, it's debatable. It is written a long time ago. I don't know the author's perspective, but based on how other parts of this book go and the genuineness and the heart within it, I can't believe that it's just, woman should be subservient to men, and that's the end all be all. And also, she's one note. I can't believe, even if it's written back then, that the rest of it could be written so well and then that not be thought out at all. To me, it doesn't compute. It's an oxymoron to me. It doesn't work. It has to be deeper than that. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's more to that relationship than I think sometimes, as I watched a couple reviews after finishing the book, have claimed it is. But that's just me. If you have a different opinion, if you vehemently disagree, feel free to respectfully tell me some of the comments. I love discourse. Henry must go back. He was on vacation a bit. That's when he was hanging out with her, but he had to go back. And another officer, I forget, but this guy named Pacini, they have this huge conversation on war. And, his big thing, the big point that stuck with me here is that there's no winning in war. Because they argue about, once the Austrians give up or whatever, then it'll be over. And I didn't write down the quote, but it was something like, war is just everybody losing, and the winner is the last person who realizes that they weren't winning to begin with, or something of the nature, but it was good. The following big thing, the really only big action scene in this movie, or in this book, there is a movie though from like the 1950s or something. But there's a big bombing scene, and Henry gets his legs hurt, so he has to be put in the hospital. And this is where he gets stuck with, seeing Catherine more. But the GOAT, okay, Rinaldi, the minute Rinaldi is on screen, okay, I think he shows up earlier, but regardless, Rinaldi is just most likely my favorite character in the entire book. He has this very, I almost want to say flirty sort of a vibe about him. I mean, I think he's very straight. He talks about women all the time. But him and Henry have this rapport with each other, and he just, for a book written so far in the past, I didn't like laugh at anything, but I did get a big smirk, a big smile on my face every time he was saying stuff, because he's a funny guy, and it's funny how, and humor can transcend all that. But I love Rinaldi. I just have to shout him out. He's my favorite character of the book. Probably the priest next. I don't know if I really like Henry and Catherine, to be honest. But I really love Rinaldi. Rinaldi is, you can't really understand unless you read the book, but Rinaldi is fantastic. We move on to book 2. Another thing that I think is, now on the one hand, I could see different perspectives here, different opinions, where somebody could say, oh, this is so romantic, and somebody can go, no. I can see both perspectives. But there's a portion where Henry tells Catherine that you are my religion, that I am nothing without you. She says something similar. And, again, as it comes from my background, I think it is heavily dangerous to make idols out of people, because people will let you down. I don't think you should ever rely so heavily upon one person. And a lot of people do. And they call it romantic. I call that unhealthy, but to each their own. I think it's very dangerous to do that. I mean, even if the relationship never ends, right? You guys are thick as thieves. What if they get hit by a car? What if they get a stroke? If you put all of your being, all of your effort, all of your time, all of your devotion, and again, that sounds so romantic, and to an extent, I agree with doing that for someone you claim to love. But if they're your completely everything, and you have no other identity but your love for them, and then they get taken away from you due to the relationship just falling apart or circumstances outside your control, then your entire world is gone. And I guess there is a romantic melancholy to that. People will have written poetry for years over that very concept of, I love this woman, and now she's been taken from me, and woe is me, what do I have to live for without her? And some beautiful poetry has been written from that sort of scenario countless times, and will be for all time, till this earth does not exist. But I think there is a way to be devoted to someone you love without making them be your everything. They can be the most important thing in your life, but if they're your absolute everything, then you're setting yourself up for failure in some capacity. Because the moment they leave, whether that be the death or whatever, even if that's when they die of old age, that's your everything is gone. How do you keep going on after that? You need to have a stronger foundation to keep you going. But that's just me. Also in this section, we learn, of course, that Catherine is pregnant. We move on to book 3. During all of book 2, Henry was in the hospital because he had to recover, but now that he's doing well enough, they put him back into the war. And he gets to have a reunion with Rinaldi and the whole gang. And then there's a section where there are Italians attacking them. What? But it turns out to be Germans wearing Italian stuff. Also, book 4, we have slurs, and I want to warn you about that now. Now, in other books, like Blood Meridian, that was the point. You're meant to be uncomfortable. I don't know if that's the case with this book, because it's just kind of thrown out. So, I don't know. That's a little uncomfy, but just something to be aware of. Also, in this section of the book is when Henry decides to desert the army, which is a big thing. Emilio, doesn't really matter who he is, but he warns Henry that he's to be arrested, and he gives him his rowboat, and Henry sails him and his pregnant wife all the way to Switzerland. And before we get to book 5, I have one more quote. It's not necessarily from this part, but I want to read it. Often a man wishes to be alone, and a girl wishes to be alone too. And if they love each other, they are jealous of that in each other. But I can truly say we never felt that. We could feel alone when we were together, alone against the others. It has only happened to me like that once. I've been alone while I was with many girls, and that is the way you can be most lonely. But we were never lonely and never afraid when we were together. I know that the night is not the same as the day, that all things are different, that the things of the night cannot be explained in the day because they do not then exist, and the night can be a dreadful time for lonely people once their loneliness has started. But with Catherine, there was almost no difference in the night except that it was even better time. If people bring so much courage to this world, the world has to kill them to break them. So of course it kills them. The world breaks everyone, and afterwards, many are strong at the broken places. But those that will not break, it kills. It kills the very good, and the very gentle, and the very brave impartially. If you are none of these, you could be sure it will kill you too. But there will be no special hurry. A few years back, I've been going to church since middle school. I had a friend invite me, and I did not care. My parents aren't religious, never picked up a Bible in my life, but my friend said there'd be free food, so I started going. And I argued with the pastor and the youth pastor a lot, because a lot of things bugged me, and I talked and realized that I was being the silly one with a lot of things that I assumed I was so right about, but I just wasn't, if you did the research. All that to say, I eventually came to my own feelings in the matter with all of that. And yet, I still felt alone. Because even if you believe in God, God doesn't, for most people, most Christians, God's not talking to you like some people claim he does. Maybe they do. Or maybe they're full of it. I don't know. But I've never experienced that. My family's complicated, as most families are. So I sought family elsewhere. Started working at this place, made a lot of friends, and I thought they could be my family. And me more because they chose me. They weren't forced to be with me. And much like making an idol out of your partner, I made an idol out of my friends. They were more important to me than God or myself. And I devoted a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of sweat, a lot of tears, a lot of love and money to a lot of people, all for the sake of having some found family. It's 2025, and now I no longer talk to any of them. Loneliness. I've always tried very hard to be empathetic, to be considerate, to be kind. So, don't usually talk back. Didn't pick fights. Tried to please everyone. Tried to make other people happy, because I wasn't happy, but I could at least make other people happy. And I say all this because I was so pure, so innocent in terms of, just tried so hard to be good to people. And I expected nothing but loyalty. For the loyalty and devotion I showed others. And, well, they're not around anymore. The world breaks those who stick around. If you want to stay completely pure and without any rough edges to your soul, to your being, whatever you want to call it, then you have to die before you live life. For to live life is to suffer. That's just the truth. At some point you will. Some people are unfortunate to have it as early as childhood. But everybody suffers. Everybody has to be broken if they're going to make it in this world. At least a little bit. They can hold on to their childhood goodness, whatever they want to call it. They can try their best to. But you just will fundamentally not be the same person that you were. So I know that was transcendent. Goes beyond the time that it was written to resonate very deeply. I want to stick on that. And as we move on to book 5, Catherine is finally giving birth. The doctors go to show Henry his baby, and he's disgusted. He's angry because it's because of this baby that the woman he loves is suffering. He later realizes that it was a stillborn. It died in birth. It choked on the umbilical cord. And shortly after that, Catherine dies of a hemorrhage. All this started just because Henry didn't feel like being alone. Who knows whether he truly loved this woman? I mean, once she said she's pregnant, typical thing, you stick around because it's just a responsible thing to do. But did he truly love her? He loved her in a sense, absolutely. I think that's undeniable. But love ultimately is not a feeling, because feelings are fleeting. Feelings come and go. When you're married to somebody, again, I don't know. I act so confident in this, but I've never been married. But if you spend enough time with a person, you're not going to always like them. But it's not about what you feel in the immediate moment. It's the promises you made. It's love isn't an act. It's an act of choice. Every day, choose your partner, even if they aren't for you, or even if they are antagonistic this day. Through sickness and in health. the good times and the bad. So their love is complicated. And the book ends with two terrible things happening. And it just kind of ends abruptly. But then that's life, isn't it? Not everything has some amazing climax. Sometimes life just happens and you move on. No resolution, no moral of the story to get you through the day. Sometimes you just suffer. And sometimes it feels like an eternity. Something as simple as I had had a breakup and I was convinced I'm just done. I'll never be loved again. It's not meant for me. Maybe that's still true. But then I met other people afterwards. So the possibility was still there. Even if I didn't believe so. And there's a Superman comic, I forget which one, but he's trying to keep a woman from jumping off and killing herself. And he goes, if you think there's just one more good day out there, then take my hand. But stories usually give you resolution. Usually give you a way to feel some sort of, like you learned something. But this book is very real because it doesn't really do that. I'm sure there's deeper meaning you could take from the ending. You could dissect the book 1,000 times and come to some conclusion about that. I'm sure people already have. It's an old book. But for me, I finished my lunch break and I'm like, wow, now I'm depressed because it ended really abruptly with the death of her and the baby. What was even the point of this entire book? Or maybe I'm not the best person to answer that. Maybe you are. If you let me know in the comment section below. But it was depressing, it was sad, and tragic. What will Henry do from here on out? We have no idea. But what I can say is even more so than the other classical stuff that I've been reading like I've read a bunch, but this really touched my heart. Like Damien did not. This did. This did. And I highly recommend it. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, sharing helps it a ton. And I will see you next time. Thank you for listening. Appreciate you all immensely. Till next time.